Providence by Max Berry. Providence is wiser than you, and you may be confident it has suited all things better to your eternal good than you could do had you been left to your own option. John Flabel. The Encounter. At last it's time you file in to watch the contact video. You've seen it before, everyone has. When you enter, you recognize the bulkheads, the fat tube lighting they used everywhere back then, even the black rubber coffee mug. It sits atop a panel near the breeches chamber's exterior door. But it's different. They had you see it for yourself to appreciate it, and they were right. When you turn your head, the picture is all around you. You can walk right into it. You could just about pick up that coffee mug and drink from it. This isn't like what you've seen before. It's like being there. Up front are 4 white suited figures. Since this is the contact video, you recognize them: Maldonado, White, Esperanza, and Bach. Just standing there, large as life, someone beside you inhales. A wild compulsion rises in your throat. You should warn them. A man to your right even takes a step and clenches his hands. You knew what you'd be watching today, but you weren't prepared for it to feel like this, like it's wrong to be here. And wrong not only because you know what's going to happen, and not even because there are 4 people who need your help and you can't give it, but wrong like you're intruding. They're about to experience the worst moment of their lives, and you've come to watch it. Fabric suits, plastic helmets. Esperanza is holding a thin stick that functions a little like a cattle prod. And that's the best weapon they have. They're scientists, remember. They went into space to study bacterial growth, and then they picked up a hint of controlled propulsion in a place it didn't belong, and there was no one else for millions of miles. They could have turned tail and run. They should have, but here they are, side by side with a cattle prod. Their positioning is terrible. That's something you didn't appreciate from the standard video. At first glance, they're poised and ready. But with this much detail, you can see everything that's waiting to go wrong. Esperanza is half a step back from where he should be. His weight is on his right foot. He's going to get tangled up with Maldonado. It's clear as day. Bach is supposed to be stationed by the interior door, but she's come too far forward. White is a mess of nerves. His eyes roam the chamber, and aha, a light on that coffee cup. You can see his thoughts, so that's where I left it. Open it, said Maldonado. Coral Beach's exterior breech door clacks and thumps and splits to reveal a depthless dark. Decompression ripples their suits. White's coffee mug falls off the shelf and rolls toward the void. Steady, says Maldonado. His voice is deep and rich and more intimate than you've heard it before. His ex-service, the only one of the crew with any military background. Used to fly shuttles back when they needed human pilots. We're making history today, don't F it up. Bach lifts her hand to wipe her brow, actually draws the back of her hand across her faceplate, then lowers her arm like she didn't even notice how crazy that was. The wind dies. The doors open as far as they go and halt with a sound you can feel through your feet. It's hollow breathing and nothing else. For minutes, everyone holds position. The standard video skips this. You see the doors open, then contact. Because it's 4 people just standing there, what's to see? It turns out that White swallows repeatedly. He closes his eyes for 10 seconds at a time. At one point, Bach says under his breath, "Crap," so quietly it's barely a word. A tremor starts in her left leg, enough to wobble the suit fabric. You see these details and they matter. Maldonado says, "Where are they?" Up in the command station of this little plastic suitcase is De Beers, watching the monitors. He's the youngest of the 5, and when Maldonado ordered him to take the helm, he protested because he wanted to be down here in the breech chamber with them, but only briefly because De Beers is impressively good-natured, with a grin that never goes missing for long. He's going to die in about 4 minutes. From what I can figure, 2 starboard, 1 aft, 1 port, 1 below, says De Beers. Don't think they've noticed that we opened the front door. For 3 days they've been tracking a half-mile wide brown rock. All they know about it is that it's full of holes and moving like it has some control over where it's going. 10 hours ago, it began to angle toward Coral Beach, as if noticing them for the first time. 60 minutes ago, it exuded 5 small dark blobs, which sailed across the darkness and stuck to Coral Beach's hull. Since then, the crew's been tracking them mostly from the sound, which is a clunk, clunk, clunk like someone's walking around out there. To your left, a woman stiff-legs it toward the exit. It's tempting to join her, but Maldonado, Esperanza, Bach, and White are there with the breech door open, and you're stuck by how they didn't have to do this. At any point, they could have decided to pull out and leave this to someone else. Even now, they could have closed the exterior door and pulled Coral Beach away. And maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. Maybe this point, their fate was sealed. But even so, they stood together and faced it, so you're staying, too. Okay, De Vere says in your ear. Seems like they noticed all 5 unknown objects converging on the breach chamber. You see their hands tighten, the skin crease around their eyes. Esperanza takes a little step to the left, which gets him out from behind Maldonto. And you think, yes, if there's still a chance. Then he steps right back where he was. You hear someone moan quietly. There's an urge to blame here. To say, there, that's what's went wrong. That's why it happened. Esperanza's positioning, Brock drifting away from the door. There must be something, a mistake without which it would have turned out differently. Surely it didn't have to be like this. A vibration, low impacts coming through the hole. De Vere's disembodied voice. 10 seconds, boss. Maldonto says, we don't know what we're going to see. Neither do they. Let's nobody turn this into something it doesn't have to be. White's lips move fractionally. You always thought he was chewing the inside of his lip, but he's actually mouthing words. When you make out a few, you realize he's praying. A rough, blocky limb appears against the darkness. It curls inside the bulkhead like a tree root. Then another limb and more. Too many limbs. An irregular shape rises into view. There's a rough-hewn head and shoulders and a massive torso, and it looks like some kind of gnarled wood. It's actually translucent rosin. You can see a hint of movement beneath its surface, threads contracting and expanding like a bowl of worms. A second shape clambers down from above, senses the gravity, and drops to the floor, landing on 6 thick limbs. The tremor comes up through your shoes. Oh God, someone behind you mutters. Maldonto, Esperanza, Bach, and White don't move. That's always seemed remarkable. Now it's flat out amazing. They watched 2 alien nightmares climb on board, and they didn't fall apart and run. The creatures moved tentatively, taking stilted steps. Your heads bob. You know what they are. They have several names nowadays, but most commonly people call them salamanders. You know a lot about them that Maldonto and his people don't. The salamanders seem to notice them. There are moments of stillness. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maldonto raises a hand in greeting. The salamanders don't respond right away. It's not clear whether they understand. The first begins to bow. It was standing on 4 hind legs, and now it goes down onto all 6. Its head dips. Maldonto isn't an expressive guy. Even here his face is half shadowed by his helmet, but you can see what's blazing in his mind. He didn't dare hope it would be life, but he didn't dare hope it would be intelligent, and he didn't dare hope it would communicate. He begins to lower his own head, mirroring a gesture he's read all wrong. The salamander's face splits open. What you're seeing is its protective rosin breaking apart to reveal its true face for the first time. But to Maldonto, it must appear as if the creature's head disintegrates. Its jaws crack open. It makes a movement in its throat, which has since been named for the noise it accompanies, huck. Maldonto's body jerks. Fluid hits the wall behind him. You know that salamanders are capable of spitting little quark-gluon slugs, which are essentially tiny black holes. They leave behind a trail of mangled matter, because what happens when that much gravity passes an inch from your heart and 5 feet from your toes is that different parts of your body experience monumentally different forces. The crew of Coral Beach doesn't know this. They only see Maldonto's body implode. A chunk of what's left hits Esperanza. He's the one with the cattle prod, which is actually an emergency igniter for Coral Beach's fuel collider, and has never been used in practice, is capable of putting out a heart-stopping charge, but Esperanza falls and loses his grip on it because he was standing too close to Maldonto. White runs. This is the part where Bach should take 2 steps back and drop the door. But the cattle prod rolls toward her and she hesitates, then runs forward and scoops it up. The salamander advances and she raises the cattle prod above her head. White reaches the door and yells for Bach to come. This is how it happens. Bach won't leave Esperanza and White won't leave Bach. The salamander pauses. Bach could strike at it, but doesn't. She is holding a cattle prod in front of an alien, and no one blamed her for freezing up in fright. But that's not what's happening. Bach is a biologist, and there's a line of concentration between her eyebrows, and you see her hearing Maldonto's words, "Don't F it up," before she stabs the first intelligent life ever found beyond Earth's warm blue bubble. She's making sure in her own mind that's the right thing to do. Maybe she could have killed one. Heard it, at least. Who knows? She's still deciding when 2 salamanders huck and turn her and White inside out. Esperanza grunts. The sound loud in your ear. He shoves away the rearranged nightmare that is Maldonto. The door is 20 feet away and he crawls toward it. The salamanders watch him. There's nothing to read in their faces. They're both slit open now. Loose strings of rosin dangling obscenely, but what's underneath the wide lipless mouths, the black eyes, is incapable of expression. Esperanza is 58 years old, botanist who made his name in flowering gene strains. The salamanders let him get almost to the door before they turn him into meat. People around you are crying. Alert lamps are cycling. Those hucks passed all the way through Coral Breach, leaving 10-inch diameter tunnels behind, so air is venting. The salamanders don't seem bothered. Rosin is already threading across their faces, forming a fresh layer behind them. More salamanders climb onto the breach chamber. They explore slowly, thoroughly. They go through the door that nobody closed. There's another behind that which stimmies, and then briefly. But when they can't force it open, they huck at it until they can. Coral Beach isn't large. It's not long until they find De Beers. He's working the engines, trying to bring the craft around on the alien ball. He has no weapons, so he decided to ram it. The salamanders don't speak. They don't try to communicate. They just kill him. You don't know why. There are a lot of theories. Some people say it wasn't their fault. We wandered into their territory, and they defended it. They are mindless animals, unaware of what they're doing. Something Maldonto did register to them as a threat. There are a lot of options. All you know is that when the video finally mercifully stops, you want to kill salamanders. As many as you can. 1. Gilly, the launch. Before he could go before a global audience of 2 billion, they wanted to fix his eyebrows. He sat before a light-ringed mirror on a chair that went up and down the whim of a woman with silver lips and tried to keep still. The left is fine, she said. The right concerns me. He's been in the chair for 2 hours. There had been a makeup person, a hairdresser, a stylist, and now the second makeup person. His face felt like a plaster model, ready to crack and fall to pieces if he smiled. Smile, she said. It did not crack. Can I get some 3-based paste for Gilligan? Gilly, he said reflexively. He didn't like Gilligan. I'm so nervous I could barf, said the person to his left. That blueberry yogurt is definitely starting to feel like a mistake. 3 others were in chairs alongside him. The speaker was Talia Beanfield, the life officer. Gilly glanced at her, but she was recording herself on her phone. He was supposed to be recording clips too. Service wanted to stitch them together into a behind-the-scenes feed of the launch ceremony. She caught his eye and smiled. For the most of the last half hour, Beanfield had been immersed in towels and clips. She looked good now, though. Her hair was artful and honey brown and glimmered as she moved. Did you try the yogurt, Gilly? No. Smart, she said to her phone. This is why Gilly's intel and I'm life. I'm sorry, said the makeup woman. I need to get in there. She stood between them and resumed her attack on Gilly's face. Stop giving the makeup people a hard time, Gilly, Beanfield said. You and your unruly eyebrows. Eyebrow, said the woman. It's only the right. A deviant, said Beanfield. Lynn's here, called a woman by the door. Last looks, please. Gilly took the opportunity to check out the others. Jackson, the captain, was reclining with a white bib tucked around her neck, eyes closed, possibly asleep. She didn't record any clips either, as far as Gilly had noticed. Between her and Beanfield was Anders, the weapons officer. He had a shock of dark hair and light stubble and was probably the most handsome man Gilly had ever met. On the occasions Gilly hadn't been able to avoid seeing his own press, he was always struck by how out of the place he looked, like a fan who had won the contest to meet celebrities. Jackson, the war hero, Anders, the torture dreamboat, Beanfield, the effortlessly charming social butterfly, and Gilly, a permanently startled-looking AI guy who couldn't find a good place to put out his hints. The door opened. A man in fatigues entered and clapped his hands. This man was Lynn, their handler from service, 30-ish and upbeat, carrying a little extra weight. It's time. How's everybody's feeling? Like a painted whore, said Anders. That's perfect, said Lynn. We're good to move then, yes? Yes, said Jackson, awake after all. She peeled off her bib and was at the door before the rest of them had managed to extract themselves from their makeup thrones. The silver-lipped woman stepped back and for the first time in a while looked into Gilly's eyes instead of around them. Good luck out there, she said. The van's windows were heavily tinted. But as I crossed the tarmac, Gilly caught a sight of the shuttle gantry, a towering metal lattice that would launch them into an upper atmosphere. From there they could rendezvous with the ship, which had recently finished its 2-year construction in high orbit. They would then perform a month-long burn followed by a hard skip to join 4 other Providence-class battleships. They were fighting an alien race farther away than anyone could imagine before. Any of that, though, was the part he was anxious about. Here's the rundown, said Lynn. Your families will be seated to the right of the stage all together. Feel free to give them a wave, below them a kiss, whatever you like. You can do that at any point, but especially at the end as you're leaving for the shuttle. I did my goodbyes this morning, Gilly said. There was a half-second while Lynn tried to figure out whether he was joking. Well, this is the one people see, so give them a wave. Yep, okay, he said. Like you mean it, said Lynn. Like you're about to embark on a harrowing 4-year mission to save the world and you might not see them again. You know what I mean? Yes, Gilly said. then eyed him another moment, then turned to Anders. Paul, there will be 2 empty seats beside your uncle. There would be for Anders' brothers who had been lost in an earlier engagement of the war. There was a 3rd brother who had taken his own life, Gilly knew, as well as a father who had drunk himself to death. The only member of Anders' family to attend the lunch was an uncle, who, when they'd been allowed to mingle this morning, had repeatedly squeezed Gilly's shoulder and entreated him to invest in his mattress store. The governor will deliver the opening address, said Lynn. 6 minutes for this part. You just need to stand still and look attentive. We then have a 2-minute spiritual but strictly non-denominational blessing, during which you may look down or skyward, alternate between the 2 as your heart tells you, but please do not repeat, make eye contact with families, wave at anyone, or give off the impression of being bored or distracted. He eyed Gilly. Understood? Got it. There are times when your bumbling obliviousness to protocol is seen as endearing, Lynn said. I just want to make it clear this would not be one of those times. I've got it, he said. I believe in you, Lynn said, and looked at Gilly a moment longer, which Gilly felt undermined the message. After that, we get into the politicians and corporates. He rattled off a few names, only some of which Gilly recognized. He spent the last year being trained by service, but was still technically a civilian, an employee of Surplex, the company that had built the ship. Of the crew of 4, he was the only one who didn't have a military background. He was also the youngest at 26, beating out Beanfield by 6 months. At one point, the Admiral will refer to your husband, Lynn said to Jackson, who was gazing out of the window at the gentry. She had put on dark sunglasses, which made Gilly wonder how much she could see. The van's weak interior light carved lines into her face. Jackson had a decade over any of them, coming up on 40. You may ask him to stand up or may just call attention to him. Neither of you need to do anything. I just want you to know there will be this moment of acknowledgement. That's fine, said Jackson. Then the Admiral will face you and say something like, so are you up to the job? And you'll say, he pointed at Gilly, well, our job is pretty simple, Gilly said. When the ship detects salamanders, we attend station. Beanfield goes to life, Anders goes to weapons, Jackson to command. I attend intel back where you can feel the engines. Then we pound everything in a 1,000-mile radius into bite-sized pieces. Rousing, Lynn said. If, however, we want to sound more upbeat, note, Beanfield said, we're going to spend every day working to repay the faith that 9 billion people across 200 countries have placed in us. If we're not up to it, we're sure going to try. Better. Maybe lose the part about 200 countries. I always say that. Shouldn't I be inclusive? As a rule, yes, said Lynn. However, some of our international allies are yet to fully discharge their funding commitments for Providence 5, or just between us to begin discharging them at all, and the negotiations are ongoing. I'd like to steer clear of that whole area. Also, there aren't 200 countries, Gilly said. I think it's 196. Beanfield looked at him. I guess you were approximating, Gilly said. Also a fair point, said Lynn. Let's not accidentally grant statehood to any unrecognized nations. Every flag on that stage has been carefully positioned so we can get an angle of the 4 of you with the stars and stripes behind the ship visible above. Visible? Gilly said. It was a popular idea that you could see ships being built from Earth, but they were the tiniest of dots, little pinpricks distinguishable only at night. Sure, said Lynn, after a few filters and adjustments. Oh, he said. And that's it, said Lynn. Then it's a direct walk to the shuttle gantry, and you don't have to worry about any of this bullcrap anymore. There's always more bullcrap, Anders said. That's true, Lynn said, but this is the worst of it. Any questions? The van slowed and turned down a path marked by glowing orange cones. There was a rising white noise which Gilly hoped was from the shuttle's engines, but probably wasn't. Earlier today, during the family meet and greet, when tiny frilly nieces and nephews in dark suits were running around the legs of politicians and generals, one of his cousins had asked, do you know how many people they say will be there? And Gilly had a rough idea because the send-off crowds had been huge for every Providence lunch, but before he could insist that he didn't want to know, the cousin had said 75,000. Gilly couldn't stop thinking about that. He might be able to pretend the broadcast audience didn't exist, but he was going to have trouble ignoring that many faces. Hey, Beanfield said, kicking his chin, you'll be fine. She was smiling, and it did make him feel better, not just the smile, but the reminder that Beanfield's made crew, because she had preternatural people skills to the point where she occasionally seemed to read his mind. They were all here because they were among the best in their fields, and they had been chosen as a sophisticated and demanding software-guided selection process. His presence wasn't an accident. He was where he was supposed to be. The van stopped, the doors were pulled open. He stepped out into a light wind and a high sky and hundreds of people scurrying about in black caps and headsets. Between huge trucks were stacked crates and heavy equipment. A short distance away rose the back of a stage, 50 feet high and twice as long in either direction. Even so, you could see the crowd spilling around its edges, an indistinct mass like a single creature. The noise was like a rolling of an ocean. "Flight crew have arrived at stage rear," said a woman in a black cap. "How many people?" asked Beanfield. "Latest estimate is 85,000, said Lynn. "We've had to open up the overflow areas." "Oh, God," Gilly said. "Don't sweat it. There will be so many lights in your face you won't be able to see a thing." A drone buzzed over Lynn's shoulder and hung there watching. Beanfield gave it a thumbs up. Gilly turned away and peered skyward, trying to approximate the ship's location. "Can you see it?" Beanfield said. He shook his head. "Too bright." "But it's there," she smiled. The crowd gave a roar. Something must be happening on stage. A moment later he heard a booming voice, echoing weirdly because all the speakers were facing the other way. "All right," said Lynn. "This is where I leave you." He eyed them. "Don't make it sappy," Anders said. "I want you to know that you're the best troupe of performing monkeys I've ever had," Lynn said. "In all seriousness, I've been nothing but impressed with the way you've carried yourselves through pre-launch. I know you don't sign up for the media circus. It makes me very happy that we've reached the point where you can finally start doing your real jobs. I know you'll make every one of us you're leaving behind very proud." "Don't make me cry," said Beanfield. "This makeup took hours." "Jackson," said the woman in the cap, pointing where she wanted her to stand. Then Beanfield, Anders, Gilligan. "Gilly," he said. The announcer said something at the same time, and the crowd roared, and he didn't know if she heard him. Lynn straightened into a salute. They returned to even Gilly, who had never quite gotten the hang of it. The woman began to lead them toward the stage steps. Then Gilly glanced back, and Lynn was still holding the salute. "There's one more step than you expect at the top," Lynn said. "Don't trip." When it was over and he was strapped into a force-absorbing harness, his knees pointed skyward, blood draining toward the back of his head. He watched a wedge of blue sky turn black through thick polymer glass. The shuttle shook like an old carnival ride and roared like a waterfall, but all of that was normal. It was actually comforting. He knew what to expect here. "Look at Gilly," said Beanfield, her voice crackling through his earpiece. "He's more relaxed than he was on stage," Anders laughed. Jackson said, clearing the Kármán line. "You're officially in space." "This is the closest you'll be to home for 4 years," Gilly said, "and now this is. This will be a boring mission if you do that the whole time," said Anders. "How much longer to the ship?" Gilly knew, but Jackson answered. 3 minutes until we reach synchronous orbit. 10 until we can pull alongside." "Look," Beanfield said. "Stars." "There have been stars for a while," Gilly said, "but so many." She was right. The glass was full of them. It wasn't like home where you gazed up at a sky scattered with a few bright pinpricks. Here was a city of endless lights. And they don't twinkle. No atmosphere. "Deceleration burn," Jackson said. "Brace yourselves." The shuttle clunked and whined. An invisible hand curled around Gilly's body and pulled him forward. The harness creaked. "Crap," said Anders suddenly. "What?" said Jackson. "I think I left my phone back there," he said. They laughed. They established synchronous orbit ahead of the ship, so it was coming up behind them, drawing closer in a way they couldn't see. The shuttle had no artificial gravity. They would have to remain strapped in until they docked. Jackson called out distances until at last something white began to slide across the polymer glass, which Gilly recognized as a section of the ship dedicated to materials fabrication. Then came more, section after section, some stenciled with flags, some with designations. He knew the ship's design intimately, but hadn't seen it firsthand since early in its construction, and felt surprised at its size. It was one thing to know it was 3 miles long and a touch over 1 million tons, another to see it. "It's like a city," Beanfield said, "or an island." "Mass projector," Anders said, pointing as a cube-like protrusion slid by. It was in a retracted state, but he was right. It was one of the guns. "That's the good stuff. Anders, we'll pass your station in a minute," Gilly said. "Where?" "You won't be able to see it. It's a couple layers beneath the hull." "Oh," Anders said. "Thanks, Mr. Tour Guide." Gilly shrugged. "You won't get to see it from the outside again." "I can't see it from the outside now." "Well," Gilly said. The ship continued to pass by. Laser batteries, flat sensor arrays, and housings that would generate their electrostatic armor. "All right," said Anders. "I don't know about you, but I'm ready to get out of this harness." "Almost there," said Jackson. The ship was appearing to slow, which meant they were matching its speed, preparing to dock. Until recently, 100 people had worked out here with tens of thousands of drones. For the last 2 weeks, though, the ship had sat practically empty, waiting. The last remaining skeleton crew would ride this shuttle back home. The ship revolved and disappeared from Gilly's view. The shuttle bumbled around for a minute, adjusting position. There was a solid clunk. "Welcome home," Jackson said. "Let's get to work." The ship was silent. It had a faint smell that put Gilly in mind of orange peel. The breach room was large enough for only one person at a time, and on the other side was a low-ceilinged corridor sprouting protrusions and bundles of cable, which threw shadows in the glow lights. They would have to get used to clambering around, ducking beneath, or squeezing past all the stuff that apparently mattered more than space for the crew. Jackson and Beanfield milled ahead of him. Behind, Anders cleared the breach door, and Gilly shuffled up to make room. This is small," Anders said. "You didn't know they had undergone hundreds of simulations. Service had hangars dedicated to mocked-up Providence sectional layouts, inside of which they role-played scenarios. I thought they were exaggerating." Anders rotated his shoulders reflexively. "This thing's 3 miles long. We can't get an extra 10 inches here?" "I'm sure that's a good reason," Gilly said. "I could ask the Surplex hardware guys. It's for appearances," Beanfield said. "We don't want people back home seeing our feeds and thinking their sacrifices have funded some kind of luxury cruise ship. I feel like there's a middle ground spot that got missed," Anders said, "by about 1,000 effing miles." "There will be an engineering reason," Gilly said. "I'll find out." "Everyone oriented?" Jackson said. "Then let's proceed to quarters. Collect your film and survival core and begin pre-flight checks." Film was a clear plastic band that fitted around the upper part of their faces and provided information display local comms and a variety of ways to interact with the ship's survival cores were bulky black boxes they had to wear strapped to their backs whenever they left their cabin, and which would, during a catastrophic depressor or thermal event, throw a thin suit or helmet around their bodies and attempt to keep them alive. The cores were awkward and uncomfortable and almost certainly pointless, it seemed to Gilly, since anything that managed to get through the ship's hull would definitely kill them outright. But it was protocol, so he would wear it. They moved deeper into the ship. At first ladder port, Jackson spun a hatch to reveal a lit ladder shaft and gestured for Gilly to step inside. When he did, motorized rungs hummed beneath his feet, bearing him upward. Their quarters all lay in the same section of sea deck, with just enough separation to keep them from tripping over each other. He maneuvered through the corridor until he found a door marked QTR4 Gilligan. There was a tactile panel, and he pushed it to reveal their only private space he would possess for the next 4 years. He stepped inside. The door jumped closed behind him. It was small but efficient. Retractable bunk, retractable desk, retractable sink, sunken handles that would reveal drawers in a closet. The lighting was pleasantly soft. He moved to the bunk, removed his shirt, and fitted his survival core. When he slid the film over his face, the word "hello" materialized on his closet, as well as above the sink and the door, places that could serve as virtual screens. "Cute," he said. He fiddled with the film until he figured out how to dismiss the welcome message. He moved toward the door, then he glanced back. It was hard to imagine how much time he was going to spend here. It was really too much to comprehend, but he supposed he didn't have to. He would just take it one day at a time. He hit the tactile button and went out. The ship burned for 33 days. During this time, Gilly acclimated to the routine and various weirdnesses of being aboard a ship, such as having plastic over half his face and not being able to stretch out without hitting something. Most of each day was spent alone, but they all ate together at least once in Con 1. 2 of them headed on duty and 2 coming off, hunched around a retractable table with metal plates and bowls and some nutritionally dense soup, maybe a loaf. Said Beanfield to Anders, "is there any chance of you eating like a decent human being?" "What?" Anders said. There was loaf all over. From clips and pics, Gilly had gotten the impression that Anders was calm and self-assured, but in reality he was kind of manic. He just went still for cameras. "I don't want to sit opposite you anymore," Beanfield said. "It pains me." Jackson said, "We have reached S-min velocity." They looked at her. "When?" Gilly said. "Just now." He checked the numbers on his film. She was right. The ship was now traveling fast enough to perform a hard skip, which would take them into the fighting zone. "Yep," said Jackson. "When do we skip?" asked Beanfield. "Next 24 hours, right?" "Where is the question?" said Anders. "Sort of Iowa's bogged down in orange zone. They might want a hand." Gilly shook his head. 2 Providences in one zone is a waste. We'll go somewhere new. This was speculation. The ship would decide when and where to skip, after processing more information than any of them could imagine. That was how the AI worked. It sucked in unimaginable quantities of raw data and produced decisions that were better optimized and more nuanced than any human could manage. They would be notified once it had made up its mind, and have just enough time to scramble to station and strap in. "If everyone could file clips first, that'd be super," said Beanfield. "There are a lot of people back home following our feeds, and leaving the solar system is a big moment." "Clips," Anders said. "How long do we have to keep that up?" "Forever," Beanfield said. "You know this." "Gilly, that means you too." He nodded. He'd been lax with his clips. He'd never enjoyed them in the first place, and had instead sunk time into tinkering with his ship, which so far had turned out to require a slightly shocking amount of maintenance. In theory, the ship was self-sufficient, able to diagnose and repair faults via a fleet of small crab-like welder robots, but in practice everything it fixed seemed to break again 3 days later. There hadn't been a problem with anything that really mattered, but Gilly had spent a lot of time shooing crabs away from leaking pipes so he could figure out the root cause. There was a short silence. This time tomorrow they might be engaging with salamanders. They had spent years imagining it, and 12 months intensively training for it, and now it was here. About time we did something useful, said Jackson. Amen, said Anders, his mouth full of loaf. They skipped, but there was only empty space. This was to be expected. It would probably take a few skips to locate the enemy at first. After their first engagement, the ship would use the data it had gathered to search more effectively. A week passed, and Gilly began to wonder if the war would be over before they did anything. Look at this, Anders told him over the comms. He sent a clip to Gilly's phone. Sword of Iowa deploying 1,000,000 tiny drones to unpick a salamander hive. Everywhere was debris. We should have gone there. Don't question the ship, Gilly said. It's smarter than you are. Then why can't it find anyone to shoot at? Gilly opened his mouth. I don't want a real answer, Anders said. I'm venting. Oh, Gilly said. Well, I'm sure it will be soon. Anders sighed dramatically. If I don't get to grill some salamanders, I want a refund. The next day, Gilly was on F deck, clad in a coverall, heavy gloves, and a helmet, wrestling with a pipe that kept wanting to spray the corridor full of steam. The walls turned orange, a klaxon began to sound, his film displayed, Alert, 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 enemy in proximity, proceed to station. It was all he'd been thinking about, but still his breath caught. A feather of fear tickled the back of his throat. He pulled off the gloves, stitched the helmet, and began to squeeze through the corridor. Jackson popped into his ear. Crew to station, we have hostiles. I see it, on my way. Anders and Beanfield chimed in, confirming their locations. They sounded calm and focused as he hoped he had. The floor was painted with animated arrows, or so it appeared through his film, and he followed them to a transport reel and let it shoot him back through the ship, and then he proceeded through the two thick doors to the intel station, which was a cramped room with a harness of heavy, flexible straps, a board, and a wraparound wall of screens, real screens, not projections, with cables wired into physical systems. Everything in here was insulated and redundant several times over. He strapped in and felt the harness grip his body. The screens lit up with data. Intel checking in, he said. Jackson. Acknowledge life? Beanfield, en route 30 seconds. Weapons? Anders, almost there. Jackson, I have eyes on the enemy. We have a single hive, 80-yard diameter. Contact 3 minutes. Gilly swept his board just like in the simulations. Wall-to-wall green here. Thank you, Intel. Beanfield. Live checking in, all green. There's a little desat in engine 2, but nothing out of band. Thank you, Live. Weapons checking in, said Anders. Thank you, Weapons. Hive is expelling hostiles, counting 10, 20, 50. Gilly could see none of this. His screens were all charts and numbers. When the engagement was over, though, he would be able to play it back with visuals if he wanted. Intel, you're green. Confirm green. How's armor? Everything's up. Thank you. We have 200 hostiles and the hive appears about empty. Weapons status? Green as grass. I'll take a full status, please. Pulse is warming up. Mass projector standing by. Laser batteries 2, 3, and 4. Relocating 4. This meant they were crawling along the skin of the ship to reach optimal firing position. The ship itself wasn't maneuverable at all. It took an hour to turn around, in the sense of arriving at the same location with the opposite bearing, so the guns had to move. Thank you. Hostiles are spreading. Contact in 30 seconds, assuming a turn. Recent engagement data from other ships showed that when first encountered, salamanders would peel off their hive in every direction as if they were fleeing. Then all turned inward together like a school of fish. How long until report's ready? A few seconds. And then there's the turn. Contact imminent. Anders pulsing. Jackson. I see it. Intel. Cores rebalancing. Pulse was ineffective. No targets destroyed. None? Said Beanfield. Confirmed. No enemies down. I'm reviewing. Ah, they turned again. Anticipated the pulse. They were outside its maximum effective range at the blip point. Oh, Gilly said, that's... Beanfield, are they supposed to do that? It's a new tactic. Gilly had studied every engagement of the war. None of had involved a double turn. Jackson, turned again. They're coming again. Weapons, advise pulse status. Anders, pulsing now. I see it. Pulse effective. ID hostiles down. 100 or so remaining. Gilly said, 3 turns. They figured out our pulse range. Noted. We'll discuss debrief. Weapons, full status, please. Laser batteries 1, 8, 9 in position. 2, 3, 4 in transit. Pulse ready in 5 seconds. 3, 2, pulsing. Confirmed, a good one. Got just about all of them. Life update, all green here. Your D side is normal? Yes, we get dips in engineering after each pulse, but it balances out right after. Alright, we're coming up on the hive. Firing. Laser batteries 1 and 8, 30%. Thank you, weapons. Hive is destroyed. 10 to 15 hostiles remaining. We got a lot of debris now. Intel, engine scaling down. We're 40 points off peak. Those laser batteries are decommissioning too, correct, Anders? Yep, they're heading home. This could happen before the end of an engagement if the ship believed they wouldn't be needed. Guess we've got this one in the bag. Weapons, please continue to call in activity. We just pulsed, yes? We did, yeah. Then report it. There's some kind of bubble hanging around the hive. 3 or 4 workers, maybe, confirmed. I can see them. Workers were small, fat, pale salamanders who didn't fight. Every hive had at least a few. They were harmless, but it was service policy to destroy them. And pow, said Anders, pulsed. All hostiles down, scanning debris. Please stand by. They waited. Confirmed, no target. There's nothing out there bigger than a golf ball. That's it, Beanfield said. That's it. Anders whooped. We're on the board. Fire out Montana has 604,322 kills, Gilly said. Montana was the first Providence. It had been roaming around space for 2 years, cleaning out target-rich environments. We've got a ways to go to catch that. Well, we've started, Beanfield said. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, Gilly said. What's that, poetry? Just a quote. So that's why they selected Gilly, Anders said. Bring a touch of class to the place. Why'd they select you? Because that was some shoddy work on weapons. Oh ho ho, Anders said. Shut it down, said Jackson. This is a combat channel. Intel, close engagement, please. We'll meet for debrief in 30 minutes. Engagement closed, Gilly said, smiling. They fell into patterns. Each day, Gilly rose, ate in the mess with whomever he was sharing a duty rotation that day, and performed ship maintenance. Sometimes he wrote reports for service, re-recorded clips. When the klaxon sounded his attention, he attended station. The engagements changed in the details, but the underlying dynamic was always the same, always salamanders dying in the hundreds before they could get anywhere near enough to spit a huck. It became routine, and occasionally he felt his mind drifting, as if he were watching a movie he'd seen before and knew by heart. This was something Service had warned him about, which Gilly had initially found hard to believe, that the mission would get boring. They were pushing into unexplored space inside the mightiest piece of military technology ever created, fighting an alien species, and it was hard to think of anything more interesting he could be doing. But the reality was that the ship's AI controlled almost everything that mattered and was so good at its job that there wasn't much for him to do, so he felt restless. What about the valve problem, Beanfield said, in one of their check-in sessions. You fixed that? Not yet, he admitted. And even now he was plagued by the intermittent pipeline failures. He had developed a dozen painstakingly researched theories that had all turned out to be wrong, because that would be good, to not have pipes bursting all over. I'll fix it. I've been spending time on swarm analysis. Beanfield's eyebrows rose, figuring out why salamanders move the way they do, trying to predict their tactics. Did Service ask you to do that? No. He felt slightly embarrassed. It was unlikely he could figure out anything Service didn't already know, or that the ship couldn't deduce in a fraction of the time. Gilly, who had developed sequencing algorithms for Surplex AI division in his life as a civilian, knew this better than anyone. Still, it was part of his day that he looked forward to more than anything else. It's just kind of fun, she smiled. You're a puzzler. I bet you do crosswords, the really impossible ones. I do, he said. Those are the best. Good, Beanfield said. Keep that up. They reached 100,000 salamander kills in 6 months, and doubled that only a few months later, when the ship discovered a particularly richly infested part of the Firebrick Zone. Gilly kept up his clips, but found himself increasingly disengaged by news from back home, which felt less relevant with each passing day, like a show he used to enjoy but had lost track of. 2 years in, Anders pinged him from LDAC and said he had something to show him. Gilly was in his cabin, checking his messages. By now they were so far out that they could only communicate with Earth when they came within range of a relay, which had just occurred for the first time in 5 days. But he headed down to LDAC. It was mostly storage down there, rows of highly wrapped crates. Rotating on a belt system inside the crates were raw materials the ship could craft into whatever it needed, including parts of itself. Gilly could toss a boot into the recycler, and a day later it would be part of a pipe. Anders stood by one of the belts, holding something flat and shiny. Check this out. In his hand was a shuriken, a throwing disc with vicious points. Ninja stars. You had the ship make ninja stars? To keep themselves amused, he and Anders had invented a variety of games to play in their downtime, like stalking each other around the ship armed with rubber balls, Whoever hit the other person first won. The last time they played, Anders had said, "You know what this game needs? Ninja stars." Gilly hadn't thought anything of it. "They're super sharp." Anders touched the point of the star to his palm, and blood welled at the spot. "Yikes, look at that." He sucked at it. "You're not suggesting we throw these at each other?" Anders nodded. "I am suggesting that." Gilly said. "You do not want to get hit by one of these bad boys." "No, I get that," he said. "It's just, it looks genuinely dangerous." Anders nodded. It is genuinely dangerous." He peered at his hand. "Look at that, still bleeding. I mean, it's one thing to get injured. Medical could fix almost anything. But I'm thinking, what if somebody takes one in the neck? There are first aid stations. Apply a patch, take a quick trip to medical, you'll be fine." "Or the eye?" "Ah," Anders said. He let his hair grow longer and his stubble had become a beard. "That's not going to happen, but I tell you what, no headshots. That can be a rule. What about that?" "I think you're assuming a level of control neither of us possesses. What's wrong with the rubber balls?" Anders sighed. The crate behind him was full of ninja stars, Gilly saw. There were hundreds. "The balls are boring, Gilly. They're played out." "I don't think they're boring." "That's because you're low sensate." This was a reference to a psych metric of sensation-seeking behavior. Gilly's score was so low that the evaluator had wanted him to resit the test. But the officer who had been assigned to steer Gilly through a year of service assured her that wasn't necessary. From his observation, Isaiah Gilligan was indeed perfectly content to sit motionless in a darkened environment for 4 hours with nothing but his thoughts. Gilly hadn't seen Anders' scores, but he presumed they were high, very high. "We're 2 years into a 4-year tour, Gilly. We can't use this little balls forever." "Isn't the fun part the stealth, not the hurting?" "It can be both," Anders said. Gilly's film said, bracket 01800 HRS slash minus 00020 HRS bracket all dash hands briefing parentheses REC 1 parentheses. "You get that?" Anders said. Gilly nodded. "I'll think about the stars." Anders grinned and clapped him on the shoulder. "You're a good man, Gilligan." "I said I'll think about it, but Anders was right. He would probably do it. He usually did what Anders wanted." They were different people, but service had good reasons for putting them together. They were complements, making each other better. "I'll see you at briefing," Anders said. Clutching his wrist, he had dripped. "I need to go to medical." Gilly arrived early and took a seat. The ship had 5 rooms like this, which could be used for meeting or briefing purposes, or as temporary bunkers in the event of emergency while the ship vented air and suppressed fires or whatever. All were spacious, with room for 4 people to sit comfortably around a small table. One had a 3-person sofa where Gilly could lean right back and stick out his legs. It was luxurious. Beanfield appeared in the doorway, nursing a steaming coffee. She had spent a lot of time working out over the last 2 years, becoming long and lean. She smiled at him. "Hey, G. You see we had a sync window?" "I did. I have a bunch of new interviews." She levered herself into a seat and set down her coffee. Her elbows splayed. "You did one with Good Morning America last sync, right? How did that go?" "Fine, although we were interrupted by an engagement. I don't know if they want to redo it." She shook her head. "That's a great finish for them. That's like gold." He hadn't considered that, but she was right. Beanfield was much more aware of public relations than he cared to be. "I haven't opened my personal messages yet. Every sync I tell myself I'm going to save them. I'll open, 10 a day so I won't run out before next sync. But then I start thinking, what if we sync again tomorrow? So I open everything and have nothing left." "Sorry, did you want coffee?" "No, I'm good." She smiled. Beanfield wore her service jacket unzipped, most of the way down the front, a standard white tee beneath. "You need to get yourself a vice, Gilligan. You're too perfect. It makes me suspicious." Jackson entered and took her usual seat, the one farthest from the door. If Gilly or Anders tried to sit in the same place more than 3 times, Beanfield would camp out in it before they arrived. Anything that looked like a rut, Beanfield was all over. But there was a captain's exemption, apparently. "Captain," said Beanfield when Gilly echoed. Jackson nodded. Sometimes Gilly thought Jackson was reading something on her film when she wasn't. She was still inscrutable to him, even after 2 years. "We synced." "We did," Jackson said, "and there's news." "Oh." "I'll fill you in when Anders gets here. Where is he?" "Medical," Gilly said. "He might be a few minutes." Jackson looked at Beanfield. Gilly wasn't totally across everyone's roles and duties, but he had figured out that whenever Anders did something bad, Beanfield was in trouble. "I'll ping him," Beanfield said. "While we're here," Gilly said, can we pull out the last engagement? There was an interesting attack pattern variation." Jackson shrugged. So he spun up a projection of their last battle. Points of light and stats coalesced on their films, appearing to play across the table. You see the ripples here? The salamanders closed in an arc, as usual, but their line wobbled, with sections moving in and out. I'd love to know whether any other crews have seen that. We're in a sync window, said Jackson. Find out. It wasn't very effective, Beanfield pointed out. They didn't get any closer than usual. The battle did actually take 8 seconds longer, Gilly said. That's almost a whole standard deviation. Only because some of them stayed out of pulse range. That's still longer. So, Beanfield said, they're learning. They're always varying their tactics, Jackson said. That's not new. But it isn't random. Almost everything they try is more effective than before. It's steady improvement. And that shouldn't be possible because we leave no survivors. They have no feedback on each tactic they try. This feels like a question for back home, Jackson said, or the ship. Yes, he admitted. I'm just curious. You're curious, Beanfield said. All right, said Jackson. The salamander cloud vanished. Anders can catch up in his own time. We have an all-hands from Len, but let me give you the spoilers. We're going into VZ. VZ was Violet Zone, an area devoid of beacons and relays. Ships that went into VZ couldn't sink at all. There was a moment of silence. Beanfield said, How long? It's situational, Jackson said. Depends on what we find. You know that. There must be an estimate. Listen to Lynn, said Jackson, and keyed a video. Lynn's upper half appeared above the table, looking more somber than usual. Evening, monkeys. Hope you're well. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just say it. Strategic Command is sending you on a trip to VZ. All expenses paid, but it's going to be a long one. Preliminary estimate is 6 months. He thought he misheard. Beanfield said, 6 months? 6 months with no sync? It was funny. They'd talked about VC before, and the joke was that Gilly would love it, since there would be no interviews, no one badgering him to record clips for his feed, just them and the ship. But 6 months was a long time to go dark, even for him. No messages, no books or movies. He said, We must be going deep. We're winning the war, Jackson said. It's where you go to find the enemy now. Boy, said Beanfield. On the table, then continued to burble. Anders will be a challenge. Well, Jackson said, that's what you're here for. Said Beanfield. Gilly liked Beanfield a lot, but sometimes she seemed to be under the impression that her job was the most important thing anyone did. In reality, it was the other 3 of them who ran the ship. Beanfield was only monitoring them. If we win the war, can we go home early? Yes, we can, Jackson said. You missed what Lynn was saying, said Beanfield. Can you rewind? No, said Jackson. Rewatch on your own time. In other news, said Lynn, from what I hear, we're signing with Freco to produce the next generation of warships, so you'll all be obsolete in about 8 years. Said Beanfield. Freco. What's wrong with Freco? Gilly said. She glanced at the Surplex logo on his jacket. Aren't they your competitor? Yes, but Freco's fine. I'm not married to Surplex. Don't let the ship hear you say that, said Beanfield. What do you have against Freco? It opposed the war. Don't you remember those ads? Only at first. It changed its mind with new data. Freco had a lot of political opinions and spent big to share them, but that wasn't unusual. Many companies lobbied against various things for reasons Gilly didn't care too much about. Well, she said, that's shifty. You're anthropomorphizing, Gilly said. Mental flexibility is desirable in an AI. Like Surplex, Freco's executive decision-making was largely controlled by software. That was practically the most valuable thing about each company now, its machine intelligence code. It was used everywhere and guided everything. Shouldn't have computers in charge anyway, Jackson said. This was an outdated opinion, and Gilly let it go. Anders entered. What did I miss? Sit down, said Beanfield. Len, Anders said. You lost weight, you handsome devil. He squeezed into his seat. His hand was wrapped in clear plastic. No sync window for 6 months, Gilly said. That's preliminary, Beanfield said. That's only an estimate. Bull crap, Anders said, and looked at Gilly, who shrugged. You know what, Beanfield said, there are actually some pretty cool mental stimulation programs we can run in VZ that we're not normally allowed. Like what? I don't know, I have to check. F me, Anders said. Anders, Jackson said. 6 months, Anders said, and stood for no apparent reason. We always knew this was a possibility, Gilly said. Sit your butt down, Beanfield said. I'm sorry, Anders said. I'm feeling the need to externalize my feelings. Don't you say I should do that? There's a time and place. Lynn began to talk about election news. Anders said, Shut up, Lynn. You should appreciate Lynn while you can, Gilly said. You won't see him for a while. Lynn can bite me, Anders said. He began to unbuckle. Anders, said Beanfield. Stop that. Anders, no one wants to see that. Anders shucked his pants. They had seen it a few times. Let's go, Lynn, right here. This is a briefing, Jackson said. Put on your GD pants. It's a debriefing now, Anders said. Get out of here, Beanfield said. You're disgracing yourself. GD, Anders said, losing all his pride. He collected his pants and shuffled out of the room. There was an awkward silence. I want to apologize for that, Beanfield said. Said Jackson. He went to medical, Gilly said. Maybe he was affected by medication just now. I'll look into it, said Beanfield. She closed her eyes and rubbed her forehead. Beezy is not going to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy, Jackson said. Beanfield caught him on the way out. Gilly, wait up. He waited. Jackson ducked through the doorway and disappeared into the corridor. Are you going to see Anders now? Do you think I should? She nodded. You're good for him. You help him blow off steam. I was going to check on the downstream distributors. Could you do this first? He said, I guess so. Thanks. She smiled brilliantly and squeezed his shoulder. Beanfield was very touchy-feely. It was best practice for a life officer, Gilly presumed. She was providing human contact. Personally, he found it distracting. They were trillions of miles from anyone he could have a relationship with, and he preferred not to be reminded about it. He could do without the touching. You're a good dude. Thanks, he said. Anders didn't respond to ping, so Gilly went and knocked on his door. After a minute, Anders pulled it open and stared at him. You're knocking, Anders said. I thought there was something wrong with the door. You were dark on ping. He glanced around Anders' cabin, which he hadn't seen in a while, and there was crap everywhere. Empty bowls on the floor, a boot on his bed. Gilly could not have lived like this. He wondered if Anders was cropping the mess out of his clips or just leaving it to service to edit out. Are you all right? Anders nodded. His breath was not great. Is Jackson peed at me? Probably. Beanfield's concerned, I bet. You want to play something? Anders scratched his face. No, I'm going to lie down. The ship gave me hydroxylin, and now my head feels huge. That explained a lot. Okay, then he hesitated. Beanfield told me to visit you. Heh, Anders said. She ordered you to play with me? Yeah, instead of doing my job. Do you feel like Beanfield gets in the way sometimes? Like how? Like, I'm trying to keep the ship in one piece, Gilly said, and she's interrupting with stuff like this. Anders was silent. I mean, it's annoying, right? That's Beanfield's job, Anders said, to be annoying. Like everyone's mom. That's a life officer. I work for Surplex, Gilly said. I'm not some service cadet she can boss around. Anders yawned enormously. Are you sure? Yes. His role had been the subject of a careful negotiation between service and Surplex. He was expected to act within the service chain of command, but he was also an independent civilian, exempt from military punishment. Well, then tell Beanfield that your job is more important than hers. That's not what I think. It was exactly what he thought. Then I don't know what to tell you, Gilly, Anders said. I'm going to sleep now. Okay, he said, and Anders closed the door. Gilly stood in the corridor for another few moments. It still bothered him. He felt he hadn't explained himself very well. It wasn't that Beanfield was annoying. It was that when she prevented him from doing his work, she was potentially endangering them. Maybe he should confront her directly. Before he could take a step, his film changed. Loss of pressure / hydrate filters, SPT 2. Oh, gee, D it, he said. He headed to his cabin to collect his tools.